Why do you coach? Welcome to the Nick Anthony Show. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Nick.
How are you today, Nick?
I'm great. Excited to be here.
That almost sounded sarcastic.
Well, one topic I think it'll come up a couple times because is traffic. I hate traffic.
Right.
Which is kind of funny that I say the word hate when we go into this topic today.
Yeah.
But I hate traffic. And I will say this morning was unbelievable getting here.
Bad or good?
No, it was easy. It was great. Back roads, smooth. Time was right. I didn't have to come from the city. It was beautiful. So
No
I'm in a great mood.
76?
No 76 today, right? Right out of Delaware County into Westchester. So
Wow.
So I'm really excited to be here, including the topic.
Well, that's
but
amazing.
Saying the topic,
Yep.
like, why don't you lead us off? And
Well, I know it's a topic that's near and dear to you. You talk about it all the time to everybody, and that is to be the right role model through being a fountain and don't be drained, be the right teammate and all that kind of stuff. And so I just, because I know you want to talk about this today, I'll tell a little story about, this is just a youth sport thing, right? But I know a family that changed clubs because the daughter was actually in a group with a whole bunch of other players who were just negative.
Mm-hmm.
They were just negative. And the daughter wanted to be really serious about the sport and really wanted to work hard and all that kind of stuff. And it was just, and I'm going to use the word that you're going to use in a few minutes, but it was just draining,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to the point to where it impacted performance, and not just performance in games, but performance in practice and all that kind of stuff. And the whole family changed teams about a year ago, and it's made a huge impact on the girl. She's gotten so much better in that year. It's just amazing. No fault to the coaches. I don't know what the coaches could have done differently, so that doesn't really help our coaches, except for our coaches to be aware of it. But, But anyway, so with that, it's just the idea of being the right energy is really important. So,
the power of positive energy, right? So I have used this, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years with our coaches at Drexel. When I heard, what led me to these thoughts about it was I heard a podcast, Increase Your Impact, Justin Sua. He's, I don't want to label him as anything. He's very inspirational. It's a great podcast. But he introduced me through the podcast of this fountain and a drain. And at first I was, I'm not even sure why. It probably just came up on my automatic feed, because I had listened to him a few times, because I don't know if it'd be something that I would stay on or tune into on purpose. But the notion is, it's very simple. It's like a fountain is energizing, is joyful, it's consistent, it's it's a positive, right? And obviously a drain is kind of the opposite. You're sucking water through a drain. And I always say to our coaches and to our student athletes, to be honest with, as much as what are they doing? When they come into a room, are they bringing energy, or are they sucking the energy out of the room?
Debbie Downer. We all know Debbie Downers.
100%. So, and I think, in leadership, it's
and
very
I
much
apologize.
the same.
Well, I want to apologize to all Debbie's out there. It's not like,
Yeah,
sorry.
it's true.
Sorry,
I
Debbie's.
guess, But I think it's so true in leadership and coaching is, what energy are you bringing, and what energy are athletes bringing to practices and to meetings and such. And we all have, a lot of coaches, you stand in front of a room, you stand in front of a team, you can look around and see who's sucking the energy out of that team, out of that. Right. And so I think it's a tool for coaches to pay attention to. And it's a standard that I think should be set for teams, for, the way coaches look at things. And when I've given this, I've always told a story about when I was a drain, and as an athlete. So in college, at Virginia, we were playing Johns Hopkins. I think they were, we were both probably in the top 5 at the time, and I was being the backup goalie. Sometimes admittedly, my head wasn't always there when it should be, right? So I think I learned some lessons in reflection of things. But the funny story is, so we had a captain who was Mike Shatner. He was unbelievable. He was such a good player, one of the best players I ever played with, and one of the best leaders I ever played with. And he taught me so much in one single moment of my college career. And we were in the locker room before the game, just, kind of, everyone's kind of getting, kind of finishing up, putting their equipment on, et cetera. And I'm at my locker and someone says something to me and I turn to the other, one of the other goalies, and I was like, I don't have a good feeling about today. And Mike Shatty walks by and hears it, and he lights me up. Why, if you don't have a good, why are you here if you don't have a good feeling? And at the moment I was terrified, and I think I have enough awareness that I knew I was wrong. And I think later when I kind of went through reflection in my job and then fountain and a drain, I was like, wow, I was a drain and I was not bringing energy to the room and to our team. So I think, it can be framed a lot of different ways. I think the fountain, just to me, like I said, consistent, and the energy and the optimism it gives off, the joy it gives off. If you go by a fountain, in playgrounds and things, you'll see kids playing in it. There's a joyful part of fountains. And I think that, that image of a fountain relative to a team, relative to a coach, relative to a teacher, is when you bring that energy, it's a positive impact on the team. And so I love the concept. I never thought our coaches at Drexel or our student athletes would buy into it as much as they did, but I don't talk about it as often as I used to when I first introduced it, but they still go back to it. Alums will mention it to me. And I do think it's something for me to remind myself, as a leader, in my job, and as coaches, our leaders, is to remind myself, am I being a fountain?
Right.
And I'm an introvert, I would say, by nature. So it doesn't come as easy, I think, to an introvert, where, you kind of think of the extrovert as always bringing the energy, and I don't necessarily think that's the case all the time. I think I've said this to our team. Sometimes being a fountain is not being a drain. I mean, when you go to 6 a.m. practice on the river and you're a rower and you got there at 5 o'clock, sometimes it's getting to sea level is not being is okay, because it isn't all about the outward, hey, extroverted, rah rah, let's make the kind of the superficial part of energy. A lot of it is just, are you present? Are you consistent? Do you show up in the drills? Do you work hard? And as a coach, like, are you on your game? Are you present with your team? Are you prepared? Like, those are fountain traits that I think coaches just need to be aware of. Players, kids, whatever they are, they know when you're faking it.
Right.
So did you prepare? Were you present? Is your staff and their trainer, if they're at practice, are they giving the energy that you want them to give? And that creates culture, and it does a lot of different things. But a fountain, in a sense, is the energy you want to give off. And I just subscribe. It's so important. The imagery obviously is easy for me, but the notion of it, the idea of it, is so important.
So you're saying even like quiet determination is positive energy.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was an introvert. I wasn't a rah-rah leader. I was a leader by example. As a player, I think I'm that probably in my professional career too, is I have trouble coming up with these funny games or funny different imagery that I see some of our coaches come up with to kind of artificially create different things. I think my kind of energy or fountain comes more out of just being consistent, making sure you show up, being positive, being present, listening to people, having the empathy. Those are all, to me, fountain traits. They relate to PKE and the E and the emotional skills, I think. But I think the fountain can be different. And so I think if you are adding to the room, you're a fountain. Some people are going to add, really high energy to it. My wife is one. She's a fountain 95% of the time, unless she's exhausted after teaching for a full day of high school. But I know that's that energy she brings to a classroom. And I think coaches can do that. And they also need to recognize if they're not the one that kind of brings that type of energy, they have assistants that do. They have other ways of creating that energy where they are, the positive energy of a practice, of a situation, of a meeting is, can come about. So I just subscribe to it. I think I love the concept. I loved it so much, obviously, that I've made you want to talk about it here today. But it really is. I just think it's such a great thought.
And I love the imagery. I love the idea of an explosion of a fountain and all that kind of stuff, and even though you kind of have to, a true fountain, you have to have a drain, but that's not really what you mean. The imagery is just like, it's just the image of sucking everything out of the room.
Yep.
Like we all know people that are really negative, and you want to avoid them. It's your natural instinct to want to avoid them. And so they can be poison on a team. Mm-hmm. Right? They can just be poison. And so along those lines, do your coaches then now recruit with the fountain and the drain in mind?
That's a good question. I have to ask some of them. But I would say maybe I think subconsciously, I definitely think some of the, they do. I can think of a couple programs that I know do, because they've there's funny times when I've walked by or walked through practice and one of the coaches or the assistant coaches will grab me and be like, I just used it. I just used the fountain. And I must have used it in recruiting because they knew exactly what I was talking about. So I can think of one program in particular over the years that definitely does. So, right. I think our staff just has bought into it. The other point I'll make about it is, so we're clear, this isn't, always sunshine and rainbow, whatever, rainbows and unicorns. It doesn't mean everything's, there's no standards to hold people to, and there's not a harsh time when a firm voice, is needed. That, you can, I believe you can have a firm voice. You can coach hard. You can even yell without sucking the air out of the room. It's probably a harder concept to grasp. But if you're holding them to the standards of the program, of the goals of the program, then you are you're bringing their energy to meet the standard.
Right.
And so I would say that's a fountain act of coaching. And because I do think that's hard, when you talk about fountains and drains and kids and joy and all these, it's hard to subscribe to the fact. I'm not saying you can't coach and you can't be right. stern and you can't, and you don't hold people accountable. That's not it at all. Raising the level of the energy to meet the standard is very, positive and full of energy. Sometimes you need to bring people out of the drain, which is they're not meeting the standard. And by doing so, sometimes it does take a firm voice right. to do so.
So as you're talking, I thought of a story, and it's going to come out as a question to see if I understand it the way you want it to be understood. And that is, I've been exposed, the last couple of years to a lot of Eastern European water polo coaches, mm-hmm. and I watch them and watch them do their craft and all that. And stern is a nice word. It's super intense on the kids, yelling and, just yelling, right? Making sure that full effort, full concentration, full focus is there in every minute of every practice, of every second of every game, on and on and on. But I also saw a coach, not working with either of my kids or anything, but I also another coach in a very competitive, very intense game is calling a player an idiot, right? And the Eastern European coaches they're very good at being very, very stern. And then as soon as practice is over or the game's over, they're like, they're their children.
Love them up.
Right?
Yep.
They love them up. Their arms are around them. They're talking to them. They treat them like humans, all that kind of. But to me, right, in my mind, what you're talking about is it's one thing to be stern. It's another thing to start calling them names. And I think once you get to the name calling, would you call that a?
Yeah, I would say that's a.
Well, because the other, right? Because it's right
personal,
on the edge.
And when things become personal, you're draining the energy.
Right, because it's right on the edge. Because it's like you want to have your players be tough enough to take tough coaching, right?
Yep.
And I know it's the Eastern European water polo coaching style, but does not work for all sports and all kids and all that kind of stuff. The kids have to have a really resilient, high level E in order to deal with that kind of coaching. But to me, that it crossed the line when you use the word idiot, right? And calling a kid an idiot. And we're talking that it was a teenage boy, probably 17, 16 years old. And to me, it's just like, how do you recover from that? And to me, it's just So
it is really hard. So I would say it's a good. I think the second part of what we wanted to talk about today is related to the positive, the energy, the fountain, right? Is the power of positive words, right? And you and I have talked about this a little bit at times. You've given me positive words over the last, however 9 years that we've worked together, but even more, I think I've paid attention to it in the last 2 or 3, and the power of positive words and the effect that coaches can have on their athletes. Again, doesn't mean you're not going to give them a stern coaching, and it often means sometimes stern coaching is when kids realize or athletes or players realize that the coach cares. But the power of positive words and the confidence it can give, which leads to things we've talked about before, helps people move from stages of competency because they're willing to take risks and things like that. The power of positive words is just amazing. So
we'll be right back to the Nick Anthony Show.
Today's show is brought to you by Rio the Film, available for free on YouTube. Access the documentary at www.riothefilm.com. That is RIOthefilm.com. Watch the inspiring true story of swimming the most iconic marathon swims in South America. www.riothefilm.com.
Welcome back to the Nick Anthony Show.
And I agree with you 100%. And it's not just, putting your arm around the kid at the end of practice and saying, good job. That's you've got to do I guess you're not allowed to put your arms around kids anymore, but you get my point, right? Yeah. Figuratively, right? You're not, but it's not just that. It's, you want to make sure your words are expressing what you want your player to do, not what you don't want them to do.
Yes.
Right. And I don't know, Tony Robbins is somebody who's like famous out there. I know there's different things about him, all that different opinion, but he has a great story along these lines. And he talks about race car driving, right? And it's, if you go into a spin and you're going to hit the wall, the last thing you want to do is look at the wall to try to come out of a spin because you end up hitting the wall.
Yeah.
You're supposed to look where you want the car to go, and then your body will take over and you have a chance of coming out of the spin, right? And so it's thinking about the wall versus thinking about where you want to go. And in swimming, there's this thing called a flip turn, right? On freestyle, you swim down and you don't touch the wall with your hands. You flip over and you try to hit the wall just perfectly, right? And you try to time it the right way and all that. But let's say you've had a bad meet. Let's say you're younger, or let's say you're even a college swimmer and you've had a bad turn. that swimming happens so fast. That turn happens so fast. It doesn't look like it on television, right? But when you're doing it, you're not thinking. You're not thinking, okay, I'm tucking here. It's like it happens just so quickly. And you're thinking about, I don't want to do a bad flip turn. Your subconscious has you thinking about doing a bad flip turn. So you can't get rid of don't and bad. You can't, you're I don't know what the science is, right?
Well, I know. Go ahead.
But
I'll finish because I have a lot on that.
You can't think fast enough to process the negative. So you have to train your swimmers, train your players to do what you want them to do. And that is, I want to do a good flip turn. And so then when your body's moving and your subconscious takes over, you're thinking good flip turn, flip turn, not don't do a bad flip turn.
Yeah.
And that sounds crazy and that sounds young, right? But I have another story at the college level that I want to tell, but you can go ahead.
Well, I want to, and I think everyone's going to figure out at some point is that I love golf. I am obsessed with golf. To your point about the science, I don't necessarily know the science. I don't want to act like a psychologist or an expert on the brain. But someone did tell me once that the brain doesn't recognize don't. So if I relate it to golf, it's there's water on the left, and there's fairway, and then is don't let the self-talk be don't hit it left, right? And just say what you want to do. Don't say what you don't want to do. Right. So very easier said than done, especially, I'm saying especially in golf. It's applicable to every sport, it's those words that stop your body from reacting fully is what they should do, is to think about what you want to do, to visualize. And again, sometime maybe we'll have a sports psychologist on that can walk us through visualization and all those things and self-talk, et cetera. But if you ever notice, watching golf, for anyone who watches golf as much as I do, is every once in a while they'll mic the caddy up and the caddy will say, they'll decide on what shot they want to hit. And the caddy does not say, just keep it, make sure you keep it right. Don't keep it left. They always say, I love that shot. That's what you want to do. It's always the ending of the positive words to create, and again, there's a science behind it, right? But I love kind of the power of the positive words, and the caddy's a fountain if we're relating it to all our topics.
But and I would contend that the caddies probably had some training to always end it on positive words, which what they want. And I would contend that most of us haven't had that training. And most coaches. And this is a strong statement. I think most coaches, naturally, they look at something and they know it's wrong and they say, don't do that.
Yes.
Right? And so don't do a bad flip turn. Don't overreach on your stroke and freestyle. Yep. Don't pick something in basketball. Don't, it's don't all the time. And it's always really it's putting the negative imagery into your players' subconscious and image in their heads. And I have I have a college, soccer coach, right? Doing some work with, and he was really frustrated because his team they kept losing the ball all the time, right? And they just kept losing the ball and they didn't, control the ball as much as he wanted. And so it's like, okay, fine. Let me, come watch a practice. Let me see what happens. And he's screaming the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful man, right? He doesn't think of himself as a screamer. Yeah. And he was yelling, don't lose the ball. Don't lose the ball all the time. Well, and soccer is all these games, right?
Yeah.
Soccer is not special. Swimming is not special, right? There's a lot of instantaneous, unconscious, competence kind of movements that just happened, right? At the subconscious level, they happen so fast. Well, guess what everybody's thinking about? They're thinking about losing the ball. So what happens? They lose the ball. Mm-hmm. So we just changed his phrase, as simple as it sounds. We changed the phrase to what he wanted.
Yep.
Which is he wanted them to possess the ball.
Yep. And you need to practice that. You need to practice.
So he himself, he needed to practice. He had a habit
Yes.
to break,
Yes.
right? But then guess what? They immediately, right? Because he started changing that. I won't say it was literally overnight,
Yeah.
but it was immediate. They started possessing the ball the way he wanted. Just that change of word from don't lose the ball to possess the ball
Yep.
was a huge difference at the college level.
Yeah.
So imagine youth sports, high school sports, right? All those kind of things. It's the same thing. Always give them the image of what you want them to do. Like you don't want them to hit the microphone. You want your hands to be over here,
Yeah.
but you want them to do. And so you want to put that image in there. So the positive words matter, not because you're a negative person or you're drained. You can be a fountain, right? And just have a couple of wrong phrases and it can still mess up your player.
Oh,
Right. And you're high energy, you're a positive person, you love your players, all this positive stuff, but just the phrases around the way you give instruction matters a ton.
Well,
and
yeah.
it can make you a drain.
well, and I think that, I think sometimes coaches, and you and I have had this conversation, and we will touch on it in a variety of different ways, maybe in an episode in itself, but coaches want to make sure they're making a difference. And it's so easy to see what they shouldn't be doing, and then correcting, because correcting, I think can get masked that that's what coaching is correcting. And I really believe the power of positive words is just motivational. And if you sit back from coaching, and think about it, what are you trying to do? You're trying to get them individually to be at their best, to feel their best, and then make that collectively, put that together. And then what's the best way to do that? And one of the big ways to do that is to give them confidence. And confidence, as we know, is everything. It's the reason you practice so much, so that when we talk about confidence and everything, you have the confidence. And as much as, you need an inner strength, and again, I'm not a psychologist, and you need all that stuff, it does not hurt to hear it from, authorities, i.e. coaches, teachers, et cetera, your boss, about positive words, right? I mean, and so I just think the power of positive words have, we've already talked about different angles of it, right? But also just the effect of them. It's such a simple thing. I mean, really, it's so elementary that we forget about it. Just encouragement, and then again, it comes out as unicorns and rainbows. That's not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying. It's the part of coaching to get people to be their best version, and sometimes they just need to be pushed what they can do, and to tell them what they can do, not what they shouldn't be doing or have been doing bad, and using the words "don't do this" or whatever is "do this." Don't throw the ball across court. How about we say, like, hit the man next to you? When you're swinging the ball around a zone. And that, again, is I know what to do. I know what not to do, but what do I do? And so
and I think that's absolutely right. And I think that every player needs correction. That's part of growth and improvement and all that kind of stuff. And it's really hard. I have found it really hard, even though I've known this lesson for decades. It's really hard not to, I'm going to use it right, to not to say the right thing, to not say the wrong thing.
Yes.
Right. I'd see even right there, that was bad.
That's
right.
why the English language wasn't written that way.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to always try to say the right thing. So you're supposed to correct them.
Yes.
Right. You're absolutely, as a coach, you're supposed to help them get better and correct them. And you're supposed to find a way to say the words so it's positive.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's in swimming. It's like don't overreach. It's like, oh, reach out. It's like where you're supposed to reach.
Yep.
And to your other point is, and I have faith that you can do it.
Yes.
I know you're capable of doing this.
Yes.
I know it's going to take 10 tries and it might take 20 tries, but I know you're going to do it. I know you're going to do it the right way.
No, I agree. I think so. I think, these, they're the same subject, but they're different subjects, right? I mean, the fountain is kind of the energy. I mean, you give off, whether it's your words, which is what we're talking about with positive words, And then it's also is the positive words, but it's the, being a fountain and not sucking the energy out of something as a drain is related to what we're talking about with positive and negative words. I mean, when you're telling somebody that don't do this, you're kind of draining the energy of that teaching lesson.
Absolutely.
And so they really do relate a lot. And I want to reiterate, and I want to kind of wrap up the discussion. It's not the extroverted energy. It's not always. It can be. It does help, no doubt, to have this. To bring that to a room. And I have friends. I've had teammates. I've had my family where they bring energy. I think is introverts can do it. And a lot of times it's raising the standard is by your actions, and your words of positive, but through your actions, leadership, those type of things, living to standards, raising the standards, that's a fountain. And coaches show up, be present, be optimistic, be encouraging, create the energy that you want your team to have. And you can't come in and, kind of with your shoulders down, or I say it all the time, coaches video themselves, watch what energy they're giving off and relate that back to the way you are playing, your team's playing. If you're kind of like, I don't understand why we don't have it. We don't, like take a look at yourself a little bit. And you might understand a little bit of the energy and why you're not being a fountain. So again, the topic is really important. And I think it's something that coaches should pay attention to.
Absolutely.
Do you guys think, because either young coaches, old coaches, but you do have a staff, like if you're not feeling it that day and you do have those kids for a couple hours, now are you suggesting maybe rely on your team as well to maybe bring up that energy if they don't have it that day? How do you guys kind of go with that advice?
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Anthony, if you want to.
Well, my first thing is you try to. So what we haven't talked about today, and it's a great question, is the benefit to yourself of being a fountain, right? Putting yourself in a positive state, right? Like we all have negative things going on in our lives, but the sooner we can put ourselves in a positive state to approach that issue, whatever that issue is, the better off we are. So my first counsel is absolutely, you try to take care of, you become a fountain. You take 5 more minutes in your car or in your office or wherever you are ahead of time to try to be up, right? To try to be that fountain. That's my first. And then, yes, if you have something that much going on, you rely on other people, right? But you have to have done the work ahead of time so other people around you can carry on your message.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think you have to have that communication with your staff to say, like, listen, I'm not sure I have it today. So I need you to bring it.
But you need to do the homework ahead
100%.
of time, right? Your staff needs to understand, right?
Yep. And I think, not even specific to a certain practice or certain day or something. I've had that discussion with coaches, like, hey, when you're hiring that next assistant, think about it. Think about how you are.
So it is part of your recruiting then.
Well, it's definitely part of your recruiting.
For your coaches.
Definitely with your coaches, because I can think of a few staffs where I'm not saying people are drains, but there's times when you need somebody who can bring that kind of energy,
right?
To when you don't have it, can match your level of energy that you're bringing to a practice, as well as coach that with your captains and your leaders, is making sure they understand the energy that's needed in practice, because you hate to say it, but you're not going to have it every day. You're just not going to be able to be a fountain. We all have lives. We all have things that are going on that the group in front of you that you're coaching or teaching or whatever don't know about. And not everyone can just change the valve, right?
But I'll also contend, and I'm going to sound a little bit like your rainbows and unicorns thing, that there's a lot of things, right, that can go wrong. There's a lot of things, life issues that people, from health or anything else, people have to deal with. The sooner you can make yourself, right, into a fountain to attack the issue with energy, right, and whether it's quiet determination or introverted energy, whatever it is, the better off you're going to be dealing with that situation too. So
100%.
So
I have a good friend who can put some things away, and show up every day.
Yeah. So,
which is amazing.
But that helps.
What they have going on in their
But that
probably
helps
in their
them.
head.
But that
Oh,
helps them
100%.
too.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
anyway, so short answer is right.
Be a fountain.
Be a fountain.
Yeah, I love it.
Be a fountain. Be a fountain.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. We want to hear from you with your questions and comments. You can find us at thenickanthonyshow.com and our social media handles, which you can find in our description.